right. So on this recording, what I want to do is I want to introduce Sean Fitzpatrick from TalentMap, and I'm going to have him and my colleague Corina Ludwig introduce themselves. And really, the purpose of this story that we're going to tell now is to tell the story of TalentMap, like what was
Mm,
going on before we came into contact with each other, what was going on when we got involved, when we worked together, with TalentMap and Wolf's Edge Integrators with Karina Ludwig, and what happened at the end and what's happened since then. Right, so just to
sure.
tell the story, and part of the reason for that is that a lot of businesses, they might read our articles or watch our videos, and it's great, but it also could be self-serving. Like, how do I know? Like, let me just like, I'd
Hmm.
rather hear from an actual business owner, kind of like, hey, what was the experience? What's the good, the bad, the ugly? Like, let's just hear the whole thing. And that's going to mean a lot more and it's going to make it more concrete to somebody than just hearing things sort of in general from Ben Wolf or Wolf's Edge Integrators or someone else at our firm. So
Okay.
I want to tell that story. So yeah, Sean, why don't you like give us like a 1 minute intro? Like where'd you come from? How'd you get to be where you are now?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Ben, and glad Karina's on the call. Um, I'll tell you a little bit, so very briefly, how I got started in this business. So we do employee listening, employee feedback. We focus mainly on what we call the mush sector. So, municipalities, universities, schools, hospitals. So fairly regulated or controlled industries. And we really collect data to help managers and leaders really understand their employees better, gain better insights, and use that information to improve the overall culture as well as improve performance in the business. And we typically deal with small mid-size companies up to very large ones. So a couple hundred people, a couple thousand people are very typical of what we do. The other nice thing we have is we have benchmark data. So if an organization wants to know, well, how's our culture compared to similar organizations, we can tell them where they're strong, where they're weak, what they got to shore up. So that's our core business. How this came across EOS and the integrator process and visionary. I actually went back a number of years. I think I read Traction. I came across it somewhere a number of years back, read it. I thought, well, that's a really interesting idea. I got introduced to the idea of a visionary and an integrator, and it made a lot of sense just because who I am as a founder of a business and probably fit into the visionary category really well. But it didn't really, didn't feel like, okay, this is the right time to do it. We were probably about I don't know 10 employees at the time, and I thought, we can manage this ourselves is sort of the thinking I had. So maybe I was actually part of Strategic Coach, which is Dan Sullivan's program, and we meet once a quarter. And I noticed there's a number of companies that were using EOS, and a number of those companies were about our size. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I started looking into it more and thought, you know what, we're going to self-implement this, because that's how EOS says, well, you could do it yourself or, bring someone in to do it. So I thought, okay, let's do it. So we put some, processes in place, started our level 10 meeting and had someone inside the company set up as a integrator. And, that was okay. It was sort of working. Probably didn't have the right integrator. Well, I know now we definitely didn't have the right integrator in there, but we really had no one else that would fit into that role. And we were doing it for a while. Well, I really wasn't getting what I wanted out of it, but it was at least giving us some muscle. We're starting to build up some muscle around discipline and regular meetings and so on. Maybe not as effective as I wanted. And so I was always keeping my eye open for this. And I actually sat in on one of your talks at one of the EOS sessions in Toronto, I think it was. But what resonated with me is you can think about integrators as different types, and you need different types at different stages in the business, if I recall. And for a certain stage, you're small, you're starting wanting to grow. This type of integrator, I can't remember what you named them, but integrator X would work well. As you sort of get into a different stage in your business, you're transitioning, maybe you need integrator Y with different characteristics. And that really resonated. I thought, you know what? That's the more of the type of integrator I wanted. I didn't want to go out and hire an integrator and make a mistake, get the wrong person in, really not knowing what I'm looking for, how it's going to work, because it's such a pivotal role, right? You're basically the general manager or chief operating officer of the company. And,
Right.
I didn't want to hand that over right away. So I was really trying to think of how do I find the right person, right team, right integrator without risking everything. And that's sort of, how I got to starting to take a real look is, okay, we have one in place, not really the right person, not the right skill set for this job, but I do want to get somebody in place. So that's what got started me on the search, I guess, if you will,
Right.
or the look for it. Yeah.
Yes, I want to get in a second, kind of like what were the specific challenges? Like what were the biggest things that needed to get better or needed to be fixed or needed to grow? And I want to get into that in a second, but first I want to ask Karina, like you are a key member of the Wolf's Edge Integrators team, not only as an integrator fractionally for our clients, but also newly, and I don't know if Sean knows this, but recently appointed to be our own head of operations, or actually the head of the whole operations department, the head of the whole integrator department at Wolf's Edge Integrators. So congratulations, Karina, on that. Hopefully that'll be announced publicly. I'm sure if it hasn't already.
Well, that's
But
great.
but Karina, if you could just like also give us like a 1 minute introduction, kind of like background of like who you are, where you came from, and then just like Sean did, if you can kind of like transition into kind of like what you heard and what you saw when you first got introduced to Sean and TalentMap.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to be here. My journey with Wolf's Edge started in 2025, spring of 2025. And, we get our choice of which clients we want to work with. So sometimes Ben will present a client and I'm like, oh, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that one. My background has been in SaaS. So I worked with a SaaS business for 23 years, helping them scale from concept right through to sale, acquisition. And I really wanted to work with clients that were at a growth stage where they wanted more, where they wanted to scale. Wanted to work with teams that were people first, where they really are about people and culture, and ones where I know that I could have a strong impact, a positive impact. So when Ben presented, your story, Sean, I looked at what you're doing, what your team is doing, and it aligned very well. It was people focused, employee engagement. I was like, yes, this is a yes from me. Very excited. And at your growth stage, I saw that you were already doing lots of really good things, and there was an opportunity to enhance what you were doing. So that was very exciting to me. And when you told your story about where you are and where you want to go, I just knew that I could be that strategic partner to help you get farther than where you are. And sometimes having that strategic partner or person to walk through with you and discuss things, and not having it be a family member or, someone that doesn't really get it,
Hmm.
or can't see the bottle from the outside, was a really value add. So I was very keen to jump in and help the TalentMap team.
Awesome. And I guess Sean, if you could speak a little bit to kind of like thinking back to, I believe it was August 2025,
Hmm.
like thinking back to that time, kind of like where were you? What were the biggest things that were working and what were the things that were not working that you were really looking for that, now right fit? We have three integrator types, exactly like you mentioned, operational, conductor, and executive. And so, we realized that the right fit type for you was conductor, which is the type of integrator that Karina is. And so, what were the like, back in August 2025, what was going on? What were the biggest things you were struggling with? What did that conductor integrator need to come in and help make happen?
Yeah. I guess there's a couple of things. Um, I was looking for someone that had sort of been there before, but been involved in, basically been in my seat, grown a business and has the experience of what it's like going through that process. Because I didn't have that in my current integrator that I had, and or anyone inside the company. So that was one thing I was looking for. And Corina sort of came with that type of background. She had worked with growing small to mid-size project management software company. They exited out of that. So she sort of had an understanding of sort of the ins and outs and the challenges of a small software company. That was one thing. The other thing that we didn't really have was a real belief or faith in that EOS system. I really liked it. I realized how valuable a structure can be. You don't have to think about, agendas and focus and structure and all that. It just is nicely laid out for our type of business. And I don't know if the integrator we had was really, he followed it and he did it, but he didn't really buy into really using it as a tool. So I was also looking for someone that will come in and bring that discipline, that focus, and sort of if they see that, oh, Sean went out and hired someone to come in to do this job, he must be pretty serious about EOS, because they've been sort of following me along, of course. But, like any visionary, they're probably thinking, okay, well, once the next squirrel goes running by in front of him, he'll chase something else. So we'll just wait it out. And I was really committed to this. And I think bringing someone in with the knowledge and experience and support of a firm that does this, I'm like, okay, this will signal to them, and it'll give us a good model of what, a nicely run EOS system from an integrator involvement will look like. So we can then use that in the future, because we knew that we were going to have a full-time integrator at some point, but I wasn't quite ready to pull the trigger, and this allowed us to make that transition.
All right, awesome. And Karina, what would you say, like thinking back, obviously from August until the end of April 2026, when TalentMap graduated onto their internal resource. So, during that time, Karina, what would you say is a couple of the highlights of like mountains that that you were able to help be the Sherpa in the climbing of those mountains, or or challenges and messes that maybe needed to get cleaned up and needed to be fixed and needed to be made better? What were a couple of the highlights from that time that you guys spent together?
Yeah, so my first week with TalentMap, what I recognized was there was lots of really great things that the team was doing, and very well established, even already in EOS. So they were already using 90 for they were doing L10s, they were having weekly meetings, which a lot of firms at that stage don't. So I was really impressed by that. What I did notice was that Sean was sitting in multiple seats. He was sitting in the visionary seat, he was sitting in the integrator seat, he was sitting in the VP of client success seat, and he was sitting in the marketing seat. So how do you run a business very successfully when you're sitting in every seat? And so that was the first priority and one of the things that we looked at. And Sean and I sat down the first day and sort of said, okay, what are all the things? What's working well in each department? What's not working well? How do we want to prioritize? And we really came up together with a roadmap of how do we move this company forward, and how are we going to take the top initiatives and make sure that those happen, and then reprioritize some of the other things that are going on. Do we have rocks? Are they the right rocks for each person on the team? Where are the gaps? Where are the overlaps that we can identify? So really putting into a grid, here's what's the top thing. And yes, there's always shiny squirrels, as Sean would say, but making sure that we prioritized how we were going to deal with those squirrels. And really getting the long-term goal was getting Sean out of the weeds in each of those departments so that he could really put himself in the number one mode. What is his best mode? And that's speaking and podcasts and writing and things that he wanted to do. So those were the big mountains that we climbed together. And I think we got there fairly soon. We had the plan. We decided, okay, as a starting place, I would take over the integrator seat. So that was a easy one. Then it was like, okay, could I sit in the CS seat temporarily until we find a CS leader, so customer success leader? And then what can we do with marketing? Can we outsource that? So we looked at options for that. And those were the biggest milestones that we accomplished first. And all of those successfully. So there were other things that we did, but those were the primary vehicles, I would say, to getting Sean to where he needed to be. Would you agree
So
on that, Sean, or was there anything else big that we missed?
No, to get going, yeah, that was a priority. Okay, let's really work. And I talked. I think I told Karina, in the next 12 months, I want to be, really in our vision. Yeah, it'll be a transition and there'll be fits and starts, but I really want to move out of holding all these different hats or wearing all these different hats. And that's really became the sort of marching orders for both of us to move forward on.
Mhm. So taking from that, the first sort of opportunity was like, okay, what people do we have in the right seats already? We already had a very strong sales leader, already had very good in product development. We were missing marketing. So how can we do that temporarily? Which one's more important? CS was more important in terms of our viewpoint and kind of where we were going to start. So we started to look for that hire, and we worked with a recruiter to help with that. I helped with that, and we ultimately landed on a really good hire that's still there today. That is, running a service team, and we ultimately hired under that service team member to replace some of the other people that were already looking to retire, and that was a real driver, I would say a game changer in terms of the structure of the business, and then started to focus on marketing and kind of how can we leverage that and looking to fill that next seat, which we were able to do as well.
Awesome. So it sounds like of the four seats that Sean, the visionary, was sitting in before we started, that throughout the engagement, we actually got Sean out of three of those four seats to be in the
Yep.
visionary seat, which is amazing. Sean, could you say a little bit more about what were the biggest wins? Like tell a couple of stories. Like what were some of the biggest wins or concrete things that that you were able to achieve with Karina's help?
Well, yeah, it's sort of even though it sounds sort of small, but one of the things, so I would, have the level 10 before Karina and then also meet with the team on things. And if when you have one-on-ones, you have them throughout the week of, product this day and CS this day and finance the next day. It just breaks up your day and you're preparing for it, running the meetings, wrapping up, following up on any to-dos. That's one quick handover. I was able to hand that over right away. So that was like, oh, God, I have so much more time than I had before because it wasn't, just big blocks of time. That was really helpful. The other thing is I could focus on the L10 meeting, going into the meeting and being involved, an active participant in the meeting, where before I would, do a lot of running around, making sure we had the scores and metrics. Kim on the finance side. She would also help with that, but I felt like I was responsible for facilitating and running it and metrics and all that, and to just hand that over for someone who knew what to do and how to talk to team members to get the right measures and metrics in place. That was a real, again, another win. So that just freed up some time. Probably the biggest area was in recruiting. Karina just hit it out of the park with the recruiting side. I just don't like recruiting. I find it hard to do. It takes a long time. It feels very risky because you're like, oh, this person seems good, but maybe not, and you're betting on that, and having someone with experience coming in, done hires in the past, was able to identify quickly some short list candidates that I was able to then interview. And that saved just piles of money to start because often we would use a recruiter, and even recruiters, they were questionable in terms of what they would bring to the table. Some of them were okay, some of them were not, but they weren't always better than doing it ourselves. But I was often the one doing it. So having Karina come in, being able to get us a short list quickly or give me a short list, and all of them were really strong candidates when I did that. So the amount of time saved, was probably in the area of, at least 10, sometimes 15 hours a week of just stuff I was doing to operate the company that was probably not, well, I shouldn't say probably, wasn't sort of exactly what I was all that good at.
Right.
And it's like often I'm like, someone else could do this. But it's not anybody could do it. Someone else can, but not everyone, because we tried it with somebody else and well, they didn't really do it all that well. So that's really the biggest sort of wins I found I had.
Awesome. And Sean, one follow-up question on that. Aside from the time saved in the recruiting process, what role did Karina have in like setting up that recruiting process for success? Like defining the role, defining measures of what success looks like. Like what was like describe her role in that because that's I think going to have an impact on after the hire. Okay, yes, we would save some time in the recruiting process, but after the hire, that's going to affect
Oh, yeah.
they're-
Yeah.
first of all, right person. Second of all, set them up for success, even if it is the right person. So tell me what role she had in
Yeah,
that.
yeah, after the hire, you're right, and that's sort of a part I often forget. But you get someone in, you're all excited, but there's a big job onboarding them, educating them, bringing them into our values, and there's a lot of just stuff that needs to be done, get access, all that sort of stuff to tools, update on our software, know how we use our systems, and I didn't have to deal with any of that. And that was a real, what I had to do is work with them on key strategic things. So I get to talk with the new hire, like Jennifer in this case, with our VP of Client Success that we brought on. And I was able to work with her on strategic initiatives instead of like, all right, okay, let's troubleshoot LastPass to make sure you got access. And let's do this to, double check you have access to this folder set. Share your screen so I can see your screen. And then if I could see, can you access? Oh, yeah, you can access this, but but you can't access. Okay, let me go in, make the admin changes, and and I was doing that, right? So all of that stuff allowed me more freedom to be able to focus on growth and product
Right.
as opposed to because all of that had to be done, right? You don't want to spend money on a hire, get someone in,
Right.
and then you don't really set them up in a successful way. And then more strategically, Karina was great at working with me to bounce off ideas as to, okay, how do we think about this job? What are the key responsibilities? What are the key roles? What are the key metrics for success? What does success look like in the first 30, 60, 90 days? So we
Mhm.
get them on board. And then what should it look like 6 months in, 9 months in, 12 months in type of thing. So both the strategic setup was very good to talk to someone about that and someone that knows what it could look like, and also just the day to day ins and outs of meetings and administration and operations to get people set up
Right.
properly. Yeah.
Awesome. And now, Karina, when you think about like as the engagement, with you as integrator of TalentMap progressed over those 9 months or whatever it was from August to the end of April, what like tell me about like towards the end of that process. Like what signaled that it was, getting near time to graduate? What steps did you take to like set that up for success? If you could say a few words about that.
Yeah, so we accomplished what we set out to do. And in the beginning, it was like, get Sean out of all the seats, right? How do we get Sean out of all the seats so he can be that true in his number one mode and doing the things that he wants to do, and that he doesn't have to attend every meeting. He didn't have to attend every
Mm.
L10. He didn't have to go to the service meetings anymore, customer success meetings anymore, because they owned it. The GWC, right? So they got it, they wanted it, they had the capacity to do it. And so really, once we had someone in each of those seats doing what they were doing, and Sean still oversaw marketing because that needed some hand holding for sure. But really, having him take that next level up and being able to oversee as opposed to do, which was the big differentiator that I saw. And of course, there's always challenges as in every business. You have someone leave, something doesn't work out. So working through those as we were going forward and say, okay, here's an opportunity. This person has left. Here's an opportunity for us to do it differently. How could we set it up differently? But really, where the success came as we said, okay, this VP of client success actually has more capabilities than we expected. And we both saw opportunity for this person to take on the integrator role that I was doing. And could we do that as part-time CS based on their company size and revenue? It made sense to say, could Jennifer take on, part of this role and part of her role? Would that work? So we actually interviewed in that capacity for that potential long-term growth, and we did. And we saw that actually much quicker than we expected, which was a real opportunity. And so the length of engagement graduated sooner because she could take on more responsibility. So the transition looked like one-on-one coaching, one-on-one mentorship, working with Jennifer to say what's working this week, what's not working, how do we transition from the things that I'm doing. So her taking over some of the L10s, her doing the one-on-one coaching with the one-on-ones that I had already done. And that smooth transition over sort of a 1 month period. And, very well equipped to lead the company and lead the team in a way that I thought was, that I was very comfortable leaving her in good hands.
Awesome. Sean, what was your experience leading towards the end of Karina serving as your integrator? Like what was that like for you, practically speaking?
Yeah. So, yeah, Karina sort of touched on it a little bit when we were hiring for this VP client success. We did ask a little bit about, are you familiar with EOS? What other sort of broad responsibilities have you had and taken, managed, and so on? So we had a feeling that this person could be a really good fit. But what was interesting, so the actual first week on the job, and first day on the job, we
Mhm.
were we were in our
Annual.
annual planning. So it's a 2 day planning session, and within about 3 or 4 hours of in the first day of the meeting, she's contributing, value and I'm like, whoa. Because she had experience in the client success role in a software company, in both small and large companies in different roles in client success, she knew what good looked like. And it was a really early indicator, though it wasn't a decisive indicator. This is in January. It was an early
Hmm.
indicator that, you know what, maybe she'll come along very nicely. And sure enough, that wasn't just a fluke. Within a month in, we're like, okay, we this is a really good hire. And within about 2 months in, so we're into maybe February timeframe, nearing the end of our first quarter. I'm like, you know what? This is working out better than I expected.
Mhm.
Because if it's like, oh well, if she didn't work out, then we just continue on in a fractional role for a while. But she was working out very well, and I was thinking, well, you know what? We're coming to the end of the quarter. Does it make sense to wait another quarter? Do we move along? And that was a difficult decision for me. I'm like, on one day I'd be like, oh no, let's wait till the end of Q2. Next day I'd be like, what the hell? Might as well get going. Let's get her in this role. And then next day, no, we'll wait till the end of Q2. So I was sort of flip flopping in my mind, and I thought, you know what? I talked with Karina about it. I talked to Jennifer about it. It's like, how comfortable do you feel take like, even, she was up here for another quarterly meeting, going and have dinner with Jennifer just one on one and having a deep conversation around, okay, if you were to take the role, here's what it would look like, and here's how I work, and here's the pros and cons of working with me, and so on. And how comfortable are you with that? And she just came across as, yeah, that's, I want to do this, and and she's shown that the capability was there, even though we're like 3 4 months into the role. She showed very early on, because she went out and hired a team actually, and she got brought in 3 hires in the client success team. So, and all our hires were really strong. So it was like, okay, it's a risk early on, but it's a risk I think I could do at this stage. And
Hmm.
I sort of felt like, well, yeah, if it falls through, you guys are always there. I could maybe go back and find another fractional integrator and pull them back in, hopefully, and
Right.
stuff like that. So that was always, wasn't a plan, but it was like, it's in my back pocket if things go completely sideways. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, look, as a final question, I want to ask one more thing, which is, thinking about other business owners like yourself out there who, maybe they've heard about the integrator concept or fractional integrator concept, and they're just not sure, oh gosh, how could a fractional integrator actually learn my business? How could they work if they're not full time? How could they work if they're not physically there all the time, if they, just come in periodically? Like, how could this really work? Is this just going to be another failed experiment? Like, for someone that's like wondering and thinking and worrying, for someone who's done it and you've gone in one end and out the other end, right? So, what would you like? I guess, what experience share or what message would you have for somebody that's kind of like thinking about it on the fence? Just like, what would you say to that person?
Yeah. You know, it's a very good question. And I sat on the fence for a while too, so it's not unusual. But bringing someone in that had been in a similar organization like ours and had been played a senior role, either COO or CEO role, to me was very valuable, and I think that paid off. I don't know if I would do it if they didn't have that. That would make me even more nervous. But the fact that they came in, someone with, I realize it now, someone with who's been a CEO picks up a business really quickly, right? Because they have to know how to put the pieces together quickly. They have to know where the potential skeletons lie, what the ins and outs, because they've seen it through a number of different, experiences over time. And it's a big jump to where, because we have a lot of great staff who've been with us for quite a while, but hadn't worked in that senior role in different businesses. And that's a big jump to move from having been in a business for 10, 15 years and having run a business for, 5, 10, 15 years or whatever number of period of time. So having that experience, that's what I would advise someone to look for. And the other thing I'd throw out is, if they're thinking about it and they can find that either through fractional or full-time or whatever, don't think it's too early. It's probably, if you think it's too early, it's like, do it now. It's like when I barbecue. I learned this lesson. I took cooking lessons. I was in New York one time, and they said, always take salmon off before you think you should. And it's do it before it's ready. And that's sort of the thing is, always start before you're ready, because if you wait till you're ready, by the time you get it all going, you probably lost 6 months along the way. So do it as soon as you feel like you could do it, even though you're nervous about it.
Amazing. Look, the main takeaway point I take away from this is a good integrator is like a good salmon. Sean, Sean, I really appreciate you making the time for this conversation, and it's been great working with you. And look forward to continue staying friends and finding ways to work together as we go on into the future.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Really proud of for how far you've come.
Yep. And thank you, Corina.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Karina, and have an amazing day.
All right. Bye-bye.